Light Paladin, why hasn't Biden ratified the ERA yet? That's a good question. I mean, I don't know what the downside of that could be. Just a reminder on the ERA.
The Equal Rights Amendment, for people that don't know, it was passed overwhelmingly in 1971 by the House and then 1972 by the Senate. But it needs 3/4 of the states to ratify it as well.
And under the statute that was passed in the early 70s, there was a deadline in which the states needed to ratify this, and that was in 82. Now, the states did not ratify it by 1982.
Virginia was the 38th state in 2020, which would make it, finally, there's been 38 states that have said that, you know, they want to put the Equal Rights Amendment into the Constitution. So the only thing that would be holding up Biden would be if he wants to adhere to the statute that puts the deadline at 1982 by the Senate. But it needs 3/4 of the states to ratify it as well.
And under the statute that was passed in the early 70s, there was a deadline in which the states needed to ratify this, and that was in 82. Now, the states did not ratify it by 1982.
Virginia was the 38th state in 2020, which would make it, finally, there's been 38 states that have said that, you know, they want to put the Equal Rights Amendment into the Constitution. So the only thing that would be holding up Biden would be if he wants to adhere to the statute that puts the deadline at 1982. My point would be, like, who cares? The Republicans don't play by the rules. You don't need to play by the rules.
And the real question is what is the rule? Can you, because look, the amendment process is a constitutional process, right? The Constitution lays out what it takes to have an amendment to the Constitution. We are up to 27 amendments now in our Constitution. I think the last one it was 27th had to do with congressional pay. Be that as it may, the point being, if the Constitution lays out this is what you need to amend the Constitution, can that process be changed by the
statute?
The statute.
That's a good point, because they met all of, like, if you have 38 states that ratified and say that women are equal to men, which is what this would be.
Here's another way to make it easier to conceive of this argument.
Yeah.
Could you pass a statute that says you only need 2 states to ratify an amendment? I would think you cannot. And so then the question becomes, well, can you create you can't create a lower bar. I don't think anybody would argue that that Congress could pass a law that says, well, we only need 2 states to ratify a change in the Constitution, like a fully dominated, let's say, Democratic House and Senate and a Democratic president. I don't think you could pass that statute. It wouldn't be constitutional. I think everybody would look at that and say that's obvious. So if you cannot lower the bar to what you need to have a constitutional amendment, can you raise the bar? Because putting a deadline on when that has to happen raises the bar. I mean, I think like the 27th, I think it took decades.
Yep.
And decades. If I remember correctly, maybe I'm missing it, but I think we looked that up.
I think you're right.
I think it was, but that ratification from the states didn't happen for like 80 years or something.
So just do it. And if the Supreme Court wants to strike it down and say, no, women are not equal to men in this country, then let them do it. But why not? There's no constitutional crisis that this sets up. You are ignoring a timer that was set in the 70s where you could easily do that. Although, you know, Biden was one of the people who voted on this, by the way, as a senator.
The 27th Amendment took 200 years to certify.
Right.
So, you know, there is a very open question as to whether it was constitutional for the House and Senate to say that you need these 3/4 states by 1982. Mm-hmm. And if that provision was not constitutional, if I had to bet, the Supreme Court would say, well, You can't sever this from that. They would have never, ratified if they thought that they had to do it within 10 years, whatever. But
Also correcting myself, he came in the Senate the following year, not that same year. But still, it's still very much, he definitely remembers it being
I'm staying in the race.
Yes.
But the bottom line is sign it and take it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will probably come up with a reason to knock it down that is like, somewhere like in that, like it'll be like, can you keep, and I would think you can. I mean, but the Supreme Court, but he should sign it. Let's just put it that way. And 120 Democrats, you might want to put up a tear sheet of this, Bradley. 120 Democrats signed a letter to Joe Biden. I don't know why it wasn't 218
and
Democrats, or 215.
It was led by outgoing, unfortunately, Congresswoman Cori Bush and Ayanna Pressley, who are on the committee about the Equal Rights Amendment, I believe. So
this is the type, right now, Democrats are looking for things to do to protect people's rights because there's reason to believe that Donald Trump is not terribly interested in protecting people's rights.
no way.
So
I'm being sarcastic. Yeah, he should definitely do it.
nice.
The idea that we're just going to not do things because the Republicans may fight it in the courts. They fight everything in the courts. Do it anyway. Whatever. Make them own it. Make the stupid Supreme Court own that they're going to vote down an equal rights amendment for the other gender.
And here's my only counter argument as to why Biden might not do it. So Biden signs it. There is a lawsuit. It's unclear to me who would have the standing in this instance, but somebody will find it. It goes to the Supreme Court. Whose job is it to defend the adoption of and the certification of that law?
Well, can you frame that question again?
Who would defend the adoption of that law? Who would be in defense of the president's ability to sign that?
Probably a women's group.
No.
Why?
It would be Pam Bondi.
Oh.
And so the only argument I could see here that rationally could be made. Now, I'm making this up. It's quite possible they have a different argument, or maybe they just don't want to do it. I don't know. Joe Biden's like, it's a little too modern. But I'm not sure. But I also do think that there could be a theory that if the president were to sign this into law, the ongoing court cases, which surely happened during the Trump administration, the people who were charged with arguing in favor of the adoption of this amendment would be from the Department of Justice under a Trump administration. And if they were to say, we're not going to contest this ruling or go in and lose the case in some way, then you cannot bring it back up. So the idea is wait for the president in 4 years to sign it, defend it vigorously then. So that's that would be the likely scenario. Bondi's not going to contest it, so they can't bring it up a second time just because it's basically cemented. And I think if the Supreme Court ruled or was able to rule on this during this time, we may be done, and you may have to start all over again.
I guess.
So, I think I am, this is complete speculation and conjecture on my part, and so I'm not sure. I want to see more, but
let's call their bluff then. This is not the kind of thing where, like, this equal rights amendment, they could say this is a way for us to cement protections for biological women in this country, and that may be the way that they interpret it. But if they're worried about suburban women in any way, which I guess maybe why not? Why would they be after these election results? I could see them also not contesting it in any real way, but maybe you're right.
There's a lot of stuff that happens like that, so you got to be careful in terms of from their perspective. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.